Assalamualaikum and hi. Today we'll be presenting about our group assignment. Here is our application name is Meowie Tracker and here is our logo. This is my group members consists of Nur Zulaika binti Muhammad Rahimi 291312 and myself Siti Alabalkis binti Abdul Rahman 291345. Introducing the Meowie Tracker, the primary application for managing personal finance with easy and precious. Meowie Tracker allows users to efficiently and add expenses by inputting the amount, date, description, and provide the capability to edit or delete existing entries as needed. Additionally, the app features as comprehensive summary view presenting a clear overview of total expenses for the current month with the pie chart.
User must register an account before logging into the app. To register, user need to enter their username, email, password, and confirm their password. An error message will appear if any fields are left empty. When user clicking the register button, a prompt message will be appear saying registration successful. Please log in. When user open the Meowie Tracker application, the login page is displayed. User must register an account before logging in. To access the home page, user need to enter their username and password. If the user data is not found in the local storage, or if an incorrect username or password is entered, an invalid username or password message will be displayed. After login, user will enter the home page, which features select month, summary, and add your expenses functionalities. When user click the add button, the add your expenses button will be displayed. Clicking the add your expenses button navigate user to the add expenses page. If users already have expenses data, they can review the summary expenses by viewing the pie chart generated based on the selected month. User can log out of the account by clicking the log out button at the top. To add expense data, user needs to first select the expense category. Next, user must fill in the date, amount, and description details. When user click the Add Expenses button, the expenses detail will be displayed in the table below. The total expenses will be also updated once the data is added. User can edit or delete the expense data by clicking the respective icon buttons. Users can navigate back to the previous page by clicking the left arrow button. User can log out of their account by clicking the log out button at the top. To edit the data, user needs to click the edit button. This will display the previous data in the fields, allowing user to update the expense details. After making the necessary changes, users must click Add Expenses to update the data. The updated expense data will be reflected in the table below. User can navigate to the previous page by clicking the left arrow button. User can log out of their account by clicking the log out button at the top. To delete data, user should click the delete button. The expense data will be permanently removed from the system. The table will update the data to reflect the deletion. Users can navigate back to the previous page by clicking the left arrow button. User can log out of their account by clicking the log out button at the top. Let's start with username field. It's labeled with label for username, and user can enter the username using the input type text, ID username as and it is required. This to make sure that users provide the username before they can move forward. Next is the password field. It works like username field, but users type password to keep the password hidden. The code for this is input type password, ID password, and form if required. This field is also mandatory. Finally, we have the submit button. It's styled to stand out with bootstrap classes like button and button primary. The code is button type submit, class button, button primary, and by clicking it, triggers the form submission to complete the login process. First is where user enter the username. We label it clearly with label for username, and they can input their username using input type text ID username, and it is required for them to fill in the field to ensure the user provide the username before proceeding it. Next, I will talk about the email field. User must provide their email address here. We label it using label for email, and they can input their email using input type email, ID email. Just like the username, the field is mandatory. Moving on to the password field, the user input the chosen password. It is similar to the username field, but for security, we use type password. So when user input their password, the password will be hidden. This field also required for submission. Next, we have the confirmation password field. User re-enter their password here to ensure the accuracy. We label it with label for confirm password, re-enter password label. And they input the password using input type password and ID confirm password, and then it is required. Lastly, we have the register button. It is styled to stand out thanks to the bootstrap classes like button and button primary. When users click it, the form submission process is triggered and completing the registration process. In this authentication JavaScript for register user code, it will handle the form submission event for user registration. It is also retrieve input values for username, email, password, and confirmation fields. It is ensure password confirmation to maintain the accuracy, and it will alert the user if a matching username is found in a local storage. It will also store the user data locally after successfully registration and alerts the user accordingly. Next is authentication for login users. It will manage the user login by capturing form submission. It will collect the username and password inputs. It will check store user data in the local storage and prompt user registration if no existing users are found. It validates enter username and password against the stored data and providing the feedback. After store the username in the local storage, it will prompt the successful login and directs them to the index page or home page. Third one is authentication for check if user is logged in. This will utilize the check login function to verify if a user is logged in. It will retrieve the current user from the local storage and redirect to the login page if no user is logged in. It will greet the user by displaying the username if they log in. Lastly is the authentication for logout users. In this code, it will implement the logout functionality and also remove the current user from the local storage. And also, lastly, it will redirect to the login page after logout.
Now let's take a look of this code. In this part of code, I will explain about the adding. From the line 60 to 63, when the user submit the expenses form, their input data such as date, amount, description, and category is captured. In line 65, the code check if the user adding a new expenses or updating an existing based on the index value. If it's new expenses, a new expenses object is created and added to the expenses array. If it edited, the existing expenses is modified. In line 72, the UI is then updated to reflect these changes using the update expenses function, and the form of fields are reset from the next entry with the reset form function in line 73. This process ensures that user input are accurately managed and displayed in the expenses tracker application. These are for the edit button. When the user click one of these buttons, when the function defined here the trigger, it's begin by the finding out the index of the clicking button, which indicate the position of corresponding expenses in the expenses array. When it retrieve the expenses object located in the index from the index expenses array, Following that, it fills the form of fields such as dates, amount, and description with the details selected as expenses, allowing the user to see and modify them. Lastly, it attaches to the index value as expenses form element, ensuring that when the form is submitted, it knows whether the user is adding the new expenses or updating the existing one based on the stored index value. These codes establish a listener that reacts to the on-click element with a class delete button. When a delete button is clicked, the function specified here is executed. It's first identify the index of the click button, which corresponds to the position of associated expenses in the expenses array. Then it removes expense object in the index from the expenses array using the splice method. This effectively deletes the selected expenses. Finally, it triggers the updated expenses function, ensuring that the user interface is refreshed to the reflect of removal expenses. This could allow the user to delete expenses by clicking the delete button, ensure that the changes are immediately reflected into the UI. In this part of code, in line 25, the local storage set item method is called to store the expenses array in the local storage. Before storing, the expenses array is converted to the JSON string format using JSON string file expenses. This ensures that the array is properly formatted for the storage in the local storage, as the local storage only supports storing data in the string format. Therefore, this line is responsible to persisting the expenses data in the local storage in JSON format. Next, this code is explaining about the managing expenses data. In line 2, it's initialized as empty array named expenses to store individual expenses record. Next, it'll define the function named filter expenses by date, responsible for filtering expenses based on the specified dates range. Inside this function is iterate through each expense object stored in the expenses array using the filter method. For each expenses, is convert to the date property to the date object, then check if it falls within the provided start and end dates. If it does, the expenses retain the filter array. This function effectively allows the user to retrieve expenses record within the specific time or period. This code is generated by the generated pie chart function create a pie chart to display the expenses data by category. It retrieves the 2D context of the canvas element expenses chart, extract the category labels and corresponding value from the provided data, and assign the predefined colors to each category. If the chart is already exists, it will destroy to make way for the new one. The function then uses chart.gsy to create a new pie chart with the specific labels, value, colors, and ensuring the chart responsive to the different screen size. This visualization helps the user quickly see how their expenses are distributed across the different categories. Now, I'll be explaining about the add expenses to the table. The add expenses to the table function adds a new expenses to the table's expenses. Select the table body, create a new table row, and set the row content with the expenses details such as date, amount, description, and category. It also adds delete button to the row. Finally, the function appends this new row to the table, making the expenses visible to the user. Next, I'll be explaining about the update total expenses code. This code is explaining about the update total expenses code function, calculate the totals of the all expenses, and updates the display amount in the interface. The event listener for category button ensure that only the clicked button is marked as active by removing all active class from the all button first and then adding it to the clicked one, providing a clear visual indication of the selected category. Now, I'll be presenting about deletion of expenses. In this code is set up of the event listener on the table body to handle the deletion of expenses entries. When the delete button is clicked, the following step is occur. In the line 116, identify the entire row containing the clicked button. It retrieves the date, amount, description, category from the row cells. It's search for the corresponding expenses object in the expenses array by matching the extract details. If the expenses is found in the array, it remove using the splice method. The code remove from the row of the table. Finally, it call update total expenses to recalculate the updated total expenses displayed on the page. This process is ensure that both visual representation in the table and the underlying data expenses array remaining consistent when the expenses is deleted.
While developing our Mioni tracker, our team faced several key challenges. First is layout and style misalignment. The interface design did not align with our envisioned aesthetic and is affecting the user experience. Second is identifying essential components. We struggle to determine which features were necessary for effective expense tracking and also provide the valuable insight of the application. And lastly is coding errors. Subtle coding errors disrupt the smooth functioning of the application and it requires an extensive debugging efforts.
In conclusion, Meowny Tracker offers a user-friendly application that can let users to easy to use. With the streamlined express entry, editing and delete functionalities, user can effortlessly stay on the top of their spending. The application comprehensive summary view provides the value insight into the month expenses through the pie chart, empowering the user to make informed financial decisions. Meowny Tracker is go-to tools for individuals seeking a convenience and efficient way to track and manage their expenses.